First of all, a tube can be a very linear device. Solid state is never superlinear. It can be kind of linear, but you almost have to use tricks like push-pull balancing, distortion cancellation techniques to get this thing to be within reason.
This is Tyson Rabany with Quality Audio Video, an award-winning showroom in Centennial, Colorado. We are absolutely honored to have the legendary Grateful Dead sound engineer John Curl in the house tonight for an evening of questions and answers. And in this video, he's going to talk about the issues with solid-state amplifiers and the Grateful Dead's wall of sound. Enjoy.
First of all, a tube can be a very linear device. Solid state is never superlinear. It can be kind of linear, but you almost have to use tricks like push-pull balancing, distortion cancellation techniques to get this thing to be within reason. Or the other way around it, which most people do, and that's 99% of everybody, they just say, okay, let's put lots of negative feedback around it, and no matter what it measures without feedback, we'll just kill, we'll take the distortion out with the feedback. Well, it makes the measurements good, but for some reason it doesn't make the sound necessarily good when you use lots of feedback under those conditions. In other words, you can make but Marty Ottila came up with a series. He came up with a little amplifier in 1973 from Philip. He was working at Philips Laboratories, and in there he had a bunch of design principles. And about the same time, in fact, even earlier than that, I was working for the Grateful Dead again. And this time they had hired me because they had a special project called the Wall of Sound. And the Wall of Sound was this huge array of things, of speakers going behind the band. They thought that the band couldn't hear. I mean, they wouldn't have what normally rock and roll guys have, or even folk people. They'll have they'll have speakers aiming at them so that they can hear themselves. Well, we got rid of all that, and all the sound came from behind the band. The problem is, if you have a microphone like this, and the speakers are behind you, you go into feedback. So what we did is we came up with a differential microphone technique where we had two identical mics. They were really very matched, factory matched, really. And then you'd sing into one, and the other one would actually not get as much of you. So you'd get a difference. But the thing about it is that the far field, which is the speakers behind, they'd see both mics equally distant. Whereas, since I'm talking into one, not the one in the bottom, there was a vocal differential. So what happened was, this thing worked, and we had this huge arrays of stuff stacked behind the band, which went out into the audience. We had tremendous bass, especially, and we could do a lot of things. And we didn't have the feedback problems. The only problem is it weighed 30,000 pounds, and it took a lot of people. And with people, you get problems too, And the band actually gave up on it after a couple of years and just said, oh, no, we're going to go back to regular stuff. With mics like this sort of mic is probably, I presume it's a directional mic. Yeah. And because if it was an omni mic, if I talked off axis, it wouldn't matter very much. But the directional mics are designed so that sound coming toward me doesn't get fed back, and then you only get the forward direction. So anyway, I built these modules for the Grateful Dead. I built these designs, and I used all the technology I could do to make it right. And they were pretty radical little guys, comparatively speaking, and they weren't like a standard op amp or something. And I had feedback, but not very much. And I had a very high, what we call a high open loop bandwidth. And they sounded good to the band. Well, that's great. You know, the band thought they were great. So then I had Mark Levinson, of all people, when he was just a young guy, make these things for the Grateful Dead. Now, this was 45 years ago. So the Grateful Dead had Mark Levinson build these modules for us. Of course, I designed the thing, but Mark built the modules. And then Mark, you know, didn't think too much. Well, it was just a job to him, as far as these modules are concerned. But then he started listening to the modules. Then he said, well, hey, why not make the JC, you know, let's make a preamp with these modules. And I said, yeah, sure, why not, you know. So then he became the JC2. That's what made the JC2 famous, with the modules like that and other modules like that I put into that thing. And these are pretty extreme ideas at the time. These were not typical of what hi-fi people were doing. Today, sometimes a lot of the people, you could say, are doing some similar stuff. I can't say for sure, but with everybody, but with a lot of people. Today, it's like, remember, it's 45 years later, and people kind of get up to speed. And so that's the story. So I started with Mark Levinson, but I never worked directly with Mark Levinson. I always was a consultant, and so I never, you know, I'd go visit him once in a while. But I moved to Switzerland, of all places, and worked in a laboratory there. And we did even more work on, and we built a power amp out of these modules. We took one of the modules, and I added an output stage, and that became the Levinson Power Amp, which he got later from me. And that's a full famous amp in its own right. I think it's the most expensive used amp in the world or something like that right at the moment. But I don't know. I've never had one myself, except the prototype.
As always, I hope you guys are getting great value out of this content that we're sharing with you. I'm Tyson Rabiny. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. You guys know what to do. And start a conversation with us below. I'd love to hear what you thought about this video and what you'd like to see in any future video series that we're going to be sharing with you. And if you're in the Denver area, be sure to stop by the best showroom in the world. We'll see you next time. Thanks.